Hi everyone, my name is Monique, and you may notice that something or someone is missing, and that's because we usually film videos together, Naveen and I. We film playthrough videos or top 10s or what have you, but lately he's been very, very busy with work, which means I've had some time to do some solo gaming for the first time ever. I played 5 solo games in the past month, and it was quite an experience. This is kind of something that I want to do a little bit more of, just to kind of prep to be able to review solo games in the future. You know, what I'm realizing is solo games they feel very different to play. Besides the fact that there's nobody else to play the game with you, just the way that the game works, the built-in mechanics, as well as the way that things score, it's quite different from a standard multiplayer games. Now, these aren't the first solo games I've ever played. Before this, I played a total of 2. The very first solo game I ever played, getting into the hobby, is a game called Oniram. And that game is actually part of a larger universe of board games called the Oniverse. They're all published by Z-Man Games, and they all have this sort of almost like a crayon-like art style. And I believe there are 5 games in that universe now, but I've only ever played Oniram. And so that was the first one that ever came out from this series. It's a card game, essentially, where you're trying to unlock doors. And every time you go through the deck, you have to kind of keep on reshuffling it. And that was honestly what detracted me initially from playing solo games in general. Since then, they've released an app for Oniram, which eliminates that whole issue. And it's actually quite a good game. If you've ever played Oniram before, it's an extremely difficult game. Like, if I were to play 10 games of that, I'll probably win 1. It's just built to be very, very difficult. Other than that, I've played Micro Macro, which, does that count? I don't know. Does it count? It's like, it's almost like a Where's Waldo, big map, and I played the entire thing by myself, so I'm considering it my second solo game. It hurt my back. I don't recommend playing that over a table space. Just put on your wall or something. And that's it. Those are the only 2 solo games I've ever played prior to embarking on this past month's journey. I'm just going to kind of take you through all the titles that I played in the past month and kind of discuss my feelings on them. The first game is one of the very first solo games I'd ever heard of, even before Oniram, while I was getting into the hobby. And I decided to just go to our nearby friendly local game store just to see what kind of solo selection they had, not realizing that a whole bunch of the games that we already own have solo modes that you can just explore. So I went and picked up Friday. This is a Friedman Freese game. This is one of the first Friedman Freese games I'd ever heard of, and this is published by Rio Grande Games. And this is a solo-only game, by the way. There's no mode for higher player counts. And basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to train Robinson Crusoe to have enough skills to finally leave the island, because his presence on the island is really bothering you and your lifestyle. And so the way that you go about doing this is you have your own deck of Robinson skill cards, I guess. And over the course of the game, you're basically pulling 2 cards from the threat deck, choosing one of them to go up against. And the whole purpose of it is so that you can defeat the threat and add that card to your skill deck, because there's kind of 2 sides to the card. One side has a threat, the other side has a skill that you will add to your deck, so that you can be more successful in defeating more threats in the future. Some cards have bonus actions on them that you can also activate if you play them, and so there's a lot of strategy that's involved. It's one of those games where you are definitely tailoring or trying to create or deck build your own deck so that eventually you'll have a really strong deck and you can finally go up against the pirates, which is your eventual goal at the end of the game. And if you're able to defeat the pirates, then for some reason that means you're strong enough to leave the island, but if not, then you lose, and that's what's going to happen a majority of the time that you play this. So I thought that it was actually a really mechanically sound game. It also has that shuffling that I wasn't a big fan of with Oniram. It's not as bad, but it is quite clever. And it's one that I think I'd like to kind of come back to every now and then. So yeah, that is Friday, a solo adventure by Friedman Freese. My next 2 games are designed by the same designer. We have The Little Flower Shop. This is a Dr. Finn game, Dr. Steve Finn, as well as Sunset Over Water, the Pocket Edition. They're both designed by Steve Finn, although I believe Sunset Over Water is also co-designed by Eduardo Baraf. And the solo mode in this version, or this game, is by a different designer, Keith Matejka. Let's start with The Little Flower Shop. So The Little Flower Shop is published by Dr. Finn Games, and Naveen and I are both fans of Dr. Finn's games. I'll pretty much play any game designed by him because they're always so unique. The way that he integrates the theme with the mechanisms, and it's always like a very small box, very quick experience. If you've never heard of Dr. Finn's games or so, you've probably heard of Biblios. That's probably one of the most famous of all his designs, but a lot of his designs are really fun to play. Both of these games are actually multiplayer games. They both play, I believe, 1 to 4 but they both have a solo mode. So this one is a dice rolling game. You're basically rolling dice that have different flowers on the die faces, as well as like vases and stuff. And you're trying to make your own little flower shop. And your flower shop is going to have 2 rows of shelving. In the higher player counts game, it's a competition to score the most points by completing your task cards. Your task cards is going to have certain objectives for you to meet, like you want to have all the same features in each row, and that's going to score you a certain number of points, or a total of 10 points worth of flower arrangements in each column. So each task card has an objective for the row and objective for the column. And so you're trying to claim these different arrangement tiles that are on the table by going through a series of rounds. It's played over the course of 6 days, and rolling your dice, saving your dice in your basket, trying to earn money. It's kind of a strange game, but also very simple and straightforward, because all you're really doing is trying to roll certain die faces, turning in your die faces to claim these arrangements by matching the types of flowers on your die faces with the ones on your arrangement tiles, and then scoring those for points. And you definitely want to have like 6 flower arrangement tiles that are completed by the end of the game so that you can really maximize your points on those task cards. Now, the thing with a solo mode in this game is the task cards are mandatory. Like if you don't complete the entire task card by the end of the game, then you just auto lose. And then if you are able to complete it, you basically just try to beat your own score every time you play. There really is no barometer for how well you did at the end of the game. And so that is one of the main reasons why I did not prefer this one over any of the other ones that I'm going to be talking about today, I guess. I also didn't really find the mechanics in playing the game to be super exciting. I think it's probably more interesting at higher player counts because there's a mechanism where you're competing for income. You're also competing for the different types of arrangement tiles that are going to be in front of you. And there's more of like an incentive to try to lock in all of your dice first, because you'll get more money. You'll also get your kind of pick of the litter. Playing it solo just didn't have that same kind of feeling. And I'm also not a big fan of not really knowing how well I did. I would like to know in general what a good score is for a certain game, I guess, because just because I beat my last score doesn't mean I did very well. So anyway, that is the Little Flower Shop. This game, on the other hand, this is called Sunset Over Water, and this is the one that's duly designed by Steve Finn as well as Eduardo Bra, and I believe this version is published by Pencil First Games. This is the Pocket Edition, so this is not a new game. A few years ago, it was released in a bigger capacity or bigger box. 2018 was the year that this game was originally published, and I think I heard a review of it somewhere, like on the Dice Tower or something, where they really enjoyed the game. So I was really interested in seeing what it was like solo, and I really, really like this game. So it's very simple as well. It's very calming, very relaxing to play. You basically have this grid of landscape cards, and you have this hand of cards that has like a time of day on it, as well as what directions you can move during the day and how many cards you can pick up on your turn. And the game is played over the course of 6 days as well, but in solo, I believe it's 8 days. And you're basically just waking up, in the solo mode at least, you're waking up in the morning, and depending on which card you choose and what time it is at the top, you have to do a thing. So it's going to either be stuff like removing the highest scoring goal cards. And then you get to move your player piece around this grid in one direction. After you move, you get to pick up a certain number of those landscape cards to potentially score for the future. And the amount of cards that you can pick up is also listed on that card. So your decision as to which card to choose for the day is really, really, really important, because it really dictates a lot of the things that you can do for that round and just for the future. Once you pick up your landscape cards, you're going to have some goal cards. And if you can meet those goals, then you can claim the card by turning in the proper landscape cards. And in this game, there is a range of scores that you can kind of compare your score to see whether or not you won. And I did not do very well. I didn't do horribly, but I'd only played these games once. I feel like the first time you play it through, you now know, like, that's what I gotta do for the next time I play this game, right? But either way, this is a really, really fun experience. It's also a really small box, and if you don't want to play it solo, you can play it with up to 4 people. So this is definitely something I think I'm gonna take with me to Essen on our trip to Europe, because it's just so tiny, and there's so much game in this tiny box. So yeah, I really loved it. This is Sunset Over Water, the Pocket Edition. All right, moving on. The next game that I played this month is another game that I picked up the same time that I picked up Friday, and it was highly recommended, and it is another solo-only game called Maquis. I think that's how you pronounce it, Maquis. Let me know if I'm mispronouncing this. But this is a worker placement game. I thought that solo games were primarily stuff like roll and writes and like deck building card games and stuff like that. So I was very wrong because this is a worker placement game and it is solo only. This game is based in France, but you are basically trying to overthrow the oppressors. So you're the good guys trying to overthrow the oppressors kind of thing. And the way that the game works is there are several missions that the game comes with. And you're just trying to complete them by putting out your workers in the different locations on the board. And depending on the location, if you are able to resolve the location during that round, you gain certain things. So you might gain resources, which you can then convert into other things, or certain locations allow you to even put out new locations onto the board because there's a little bit of a location curating mechanism where there are 3 locations that can be variable depending on what you need to do for that game. But the problem is you're also putting out these soldiers who are going to try to capture you and arrest you. And so after putting out all of your workers, which are the resistance technically, as well as the patrol, then for each of your workers that you are unable to trace a path back to your home base, they get arrested and removed from the game entirely. There's a little bit more to the game than that, but that is probably the most basic mechanism that makes the game difficult, in my opinion, because you are trying to juggle your workers as well as where you're putting them, but you also need to put them on certain locations in order for you to win that mission. So it's quite difficult, and that's kind of the theme with all these solo games. Solo games are really hard. They're harder than higher player count games, in my opinion, because you're basically playing against the game. And the game is really out to try to make it as difficult as possible for you to win. So, if you play a solo game and you're just winning every single time, then it's not going to feel like a very good solo game, I guess, which makes a lot of them very difficult. And this is no exception, but I highly enjoyed it. The components themselves, when you lay out the components, are all really, really beautiful. There's not a whole lot that you have to lay out. It looks like a lot of pieces, but it's actually quite simple to set up. And there are a ton of missions that come to the game. So the replayability is quite high because of that variability. But like I said, it's a really difficult game to play. I played it actually as a co-op game with Naveen. The both of us tried to puzzle it out together. It's tough. It's a tough game, but it is quite good. So my first solo worker placement game, I'm definitely on the lookout for more of these because I really like worker placement as a mechanism and you don't need to shuffle any cards. Anyway, that is game number 4, Maquis. And this, by the way, is designed by Jake Staines and published by Gigamek Games. So that is Maquis. All right, last but certainly not least, is a game that we just got in that we wanted to review together because this is a higher player count game as well. It's published by AEG and designed by 2 designers. It is called The Guild of Merchant Explorers. Check out that title, right? Now that's a title. And the designers, by the way, are Matthew Dunstan and Brett J. Gilbert, who I just realized not too long ago are also the 2 same designers as Elysium. They designed Elysium, which is one of our favorite games of all time. So this is a game that's published by AEG. I believe it's new. I think it just came out this year, and it plays 1 to 4 players, but it does have a solo mode. And what I like about this solo mode is it's not that different from the main version of the game. And I think part of the reason why is because the game itself is almost like multiplayer solitaire. There's not a whole lot of player interaction when you're playing this game with other players. If you've never played this game before, it's basically, people describe it as like a roll and write without the writing. A flip and write, I guess, without the writing, because you're doing it with a deck of cards. And so the way that the game works is everybody has to play with the same map, and it's played over the course of several eras. Each era, you're going to flip over these cards from a deck, and it's going to tell you what type of terrain you must explore by placing out your little explorer cubes. It might say stuff like to desert terrain. And whenever you explore with an explorer cube, it has to be either adjacent to your starting location or adjacent to a village or another explorer cube. That is the difficult part of the game. You're always branching out from one area, and the only way for you to reach outer parts of the map is by building these villages. But the way that you build a village is by completely filling a terrain with your explorer cubes. So you have to put a cube on every space in one type of terrain, and then you can automatically build a village, and now moving forward for the rest of the game, you can spawn adjacent to a village. So it does take time to build up that machine to kind of go further and further out. And what you're basically trying to do here is you're just trying to earn the most amount of money, I think. I think those are coins. They're the little point tokens. Certain spaces just give you money just by placing a cube on them because they're already printed on the map itself. But other spaces are going to be stuff like ruins, where you can explore in order to gain these treasure cards, which will either gain you an immediate benefit or an end game scoring condition. You can explore these discovery tower locations, which are usually on the extremes of the map, and those score you a lot of points, but they're really hard to reach. But you really want to build those villages, because at the end of every era, you remove all of your explorer cubes from the map, except for those villages. And so in a way, your map kind of resets from round to round, which makes it kind of tough to reestablish your next strategy going into the next round. It's interesting because you can kind of foresee which types of terrain are still in the deck, meaning which ones are still likely to be pulled. And every time you pull an era card, you get to draw 2 of these investigate cards, which basically act as an engine building aspect to the game. It's now a new type of action that only you get to utilize whenever that specific era card is pulled. It's kind of a difficult game to explain without fully seeing it, but I love this game. I find it to be quite addicting. There are certain kind of gripes that I have with the game. One of them being the physical appearance. The colors are very muted, and so in certain like low light settings, I have a difficult time distinguishing some of the terrain types. The color palette that they used, I think, is really beautiful, but it's just hard to differentiate for me. And the maps are also very, very laminated, so the cubes kind of slip and slide around. So if you just kind of like, I don't know, if you sneeze or you just do this with your sleeve, then all your cubes are going to get shoved off the map, which is not ideal. I also have a hard time keeping track of which card I just pulled. So if you can think of a good system for that, that would be helpful. But what I really like about this game, and it's not specific to the solo mode, is that engine building aspect to it. The game itself without that aspect is fine. You know, it just becomes kind of like a standard exploration game where you're just kind of trying to put cubes on a map. But because you can tailor your own type of unique actions using that investigate deck, I think that is a really, really cool part of the game. And it also adds to the replayability of it. In addition to just the variety of maps that come in the game, because some of them have special rules, some maps have certain features that you won't see on other maps. There are also these goal cards that you can complete for points in higher player counts, and the goal cards are specific to the maps that you play. In the solo mode, similar to one of the other games, you have to complete all 3 goals in order for you to win. So if you don't complete all 3 goals, you just auto lose, which in my opinion makes the solo game much harder because you don't have as much freedom to kind of do what you want and try to go with a strategy that you want to do. You're forced to do all 3 of these goals. And there's kind of a timer on it. If you don't meet the left-hand goal quickly enough, then you won't be able to score any points at all for meeting it. Anyway, the solo mode for this game is also difficult, but it does give you a barometer as to how well you did. I believe in this one, you choose a difficulty of play, like easy, normal, or hard, and then depending on how well you scored compared to the difficulty level, you either win or lose. So I chose normal and I lost. But I think maybe I know what I can do to do better the next time I play. Maybe. I played this game like 3 or 4 times already, and I feel like I'm still not very good at it. But I always have a really, really good time every time I play it. So anyway, that was game number 5 for me, the one I played most recently, and I think I played this one just a couple of days ago. So I love it. This is probably, this might be my favorite out of all 5 of them, and I don't really care what player count I play this at. I really, really enjoyed this one. So there you go. Those are all the solo games I played in this past month. I'm definitely not stopping there. I'm a little bit addicted to the solo designs. I want to see what else is out there, and I actually took a bunch of recommendations through social media, so I have this long running list of solo games to get to. And a lot of people were like, just look at your collection and just look at the solo modes you already have. So some games I'm looking forward to playing are Ark Nova, of course, because apparently that has a really good solo mode. Paladins of the West Kingdom, that also came highly recommended. Wingspan, Under Falling Skies, which I may end up doing a playthrough video of since we had to scrap the last one since we got a rule horribly wrong. And this one that just came in. This is a heavy roll and write that's thematically based off of Twilight Imperium. So this is Twilight Inscription, and apparently this has a solo mode, so I would really love to try this solo. And of course, the Lacerda games, because I believe they all have solo modes, and some of them are designed by David Turksey, who is a designer that I highly respect as well. So there's lots to explore out there. I'm really looking forward to it. If you have any recommendations, what are your favorite solo games? And where are my solo gamers at? I would really love to know who you all are so that we can form a little community and talk about the solo games that we're playing. So if you have any solo game recommendations or solo YouTube channels that you'd like to recommend, please leave them in the comments down below and I'll check them all out. So anyway, that is it for now. I hope to do more of these in the future as I continue to explore more solo games. But until then, thanks so much for watching. Bye!